Picture this. It's August 4th, 1996. The sun is blazing at 115 degrees Fahrenheit in Death Valley, California. Park Ranger Tom Kirby is conducting what should be a routine patrol through one of Earth's most hostile environments when something catches his eye in the distance. Something that shouldn't exist. A small figure is walking across the desert floor. In this heat, in this wasteland where nothing survives. As he drives closer, his radio crackles with disbelief. What he's seeing defies every law of human biology, every survival manual ever written. It's a little girl, 11 years old, walking, talking, alive. She has been alone in Death Valley for 13 days with no food and virtually no water. Her parents and 5-year-old brother are dead, their bodies scattered across miles of scorching desert. By every scientific calculation, she should have died over a week ago. But she's standing there, asking the ranger if her family is okay. Her name is Anja Rimkus, and her survival story is about to rewrite everything we thought we knew about human endurance. Welcome back to Hold On Survival Stories, where we dive into the most harrowing tales of human endurance and the will to survive against impossible odds. What you just heard isn't fiction. It's the true story of one of the most extraordinary survival cases ever documented. In July 1996, the Rimkus family from Germany made a single wrong turn that led them into the scorching hell of Death Valley during the deadliest time of year. What followed was a nightmare of dehydration, desperation, and devastating choices that claimed 3 lives while creating a survival story so incredible that it challenged everything experts believed about human limits. This isn't just a story about getting lost. It's about the psychology of panic, the fatal mistakes loving parents make when trying to save their children, and the extraordinary strength that can emerge from the most innocent among us. It's about a little girl who survived by drinking her own urine, moving only at night, and refusing to accept that death was inevitable. Because sometimes survival isn't about being the strongest or the smartest. Sometimes it's about being too young to understand that giving up is even an option. The Rimkus family had saved for years to make their American dream vacation a reality. Cornelius and Elke Rimkus, both in their 30s, wanted to show their children, 11-year-old Anja and 5-year-old George, the wonders of the American West. They had meticulously planned their route through California and Nevada, armed with rental car maps and guidebooks, eager to experience the raw beauty of the desert landscape. On July 22, 1996, the family was driving from Las Vegas to the scenic Mammoth Lakes area when they made a decision that would seal their fate. Seeking a shortcut that would save them time and give them a more adventurous route, Cornelius turned off the main highway onto what appeared to be a desert road marked on their map. The road seemed legitimate. It was even marked with occasional signs. But what the family didn't realize was that they were entering one of the most dangerous and remote areas in North America. Death Valley isn't called Death Valley as a marketing gimmick. This 3.4 million acre wasteland holds the record for the highest air temperature ever recorded on Earth, 134 degrees Fahrenheit. During summer months, ground temperatures can exceed 200 degrees, hot enough to cause third-degree burns. The valley sits 282 feet below sea level, creating a natural oven where heat becomes trapped and amplified. There are no gas stations, no water sources, and no cell phone coverage across vast stretches of this lunar-like landscape. The Rimkus family had entered a place where even experienced desert rats think twice before venturing during summer months. They had water for maybe a day, snacks for the children, and absolutely no understanding of what they had gotten themselves into. As their small rental car bounced along increasingly rough dirt roads, the temperature outside climbed past 110 degrees, and their adventure began its transformation into a fight for survival. What happens to the human mind when we realize we're truly lost? The Rimkus family's ordeal began with a series of psychological traps that have claimed countless lives in wilderness emergencies. As their dirt road became rougher and more primitive, Cornelius faced the first critical decision point: that separates survivors from victims. When to turn back. This is where the psychology of commitment bias kicks in. The deeper we go down the wrong path, the harder it becomes to admit our mistake and reverse course. Cornelius had already driven for hours down increasingly poor roads, burning precious fuel and time. Turning back would mean admitting failure, disappointing his family, and losing the adventure they had come so far to experience. So he pressed on, each mile making the return journey longer and more daunting. When the family finally accepted they were lost, panic began to set in. And panic is the deadliest enemy in any survival situation. The human stress response floods our bodies with cortisol and adrenaline, chemicals that shut down rational thinking and make us susceptible to fatal mistakes. Cornelius began driving faster, frantically searching for landmarks or signs of civilization, burning through their limited fuel supply. The family's water consumption increased dramatically as stress and rising temperatures took their toll. Children dehydrate much faster than adults, and little George was already showing signs of distress. What the Rimkus family needed was the survivor's most important tool, the ability to stop, assess their situation rationally, and make calm decisions based on facts rather than fear. Instead, they fell into the classic lost person's trap, constant movement without a plan, burning energy and resources while getting further from safety. Desert survival experts know that the moment you realize you're lost, your first priority is to stop. Stop moving, stop panicking, and start thinking. The Rimkus family continued driving until their car finally broke down in a remote canyon, with no idea where they were or how far they had traveled from the main road. They were now facing the full wrath of Death Valley with no shelter, rapidly depleting water supplies, and no way to signal for help. Cornelius and Elke Rimkus, both in their 30s, wanted to show their children, 11-year-old Anja and 5-year-old George, the wonders of the American West. They had meticulously planned their route through California and Nevada, armed with rental car maps and guidebooks, eager to experience the raw beauty of the desert landscape. On July 22, 1996, the family was driving from Las Vegas to the scenic Mammoth Lakes area when they made a decision that would seal their fate. Seeking a shortcut that would save them time and give them a more adventurous route, Cornelius turned off the main highway onto what appeared to be a desert road marked on their map. The road seemed legitimate. It was even marked with occasional signs. But what the family didn't realize was that they were entering one of the most dangerous and remote areas in North America. Death Valley isn't called Death Valley as a marketing gimmick. This 3.4 million acre wasteland holds the record for the highest air temperature ever recorded on Earth, 134 degrees Fahrenheit. During summer months, ground temperatures can exceed 200 degrees, hot enough to cause third-degree burns. The valley sits 282 feet below sea level, creating a natural oven where heat becomes trapped and amplified. There are no gas stations, no water sources, and no cell phone coverage across vast stretches of this lunar-like landscape. The Rimkus family had entered a place where even experienced desert rats think twice before venturing during summer months. They had water for maybe a day, snacks for the children, and absolutely no understanding of what they had gotten themselves into. As their small rental car bounced along increasingly rough dirt roads, the temperature outside climbed past 110 degrees, and their adventure began its transformation into a fight for survival. When the Rimkus family's car finally gave out, they faced the harsh mathematics of desert survival. In Death Valley's summer heat, the human body can lose up to 2 gallons of water per day through sweating and breathing. Without replacement, death from dehydration occurs within 72 hours. With the outside temperature soaring past 115 degrees Fahrenheit, the family's car became both a blessing and a curse. It provided shade but also became a metal oven that could reach lethal temperatures. The psychology of desert survival centers on conservation versus movement, and the Rimkus family faced an agonizing choice. Should they stay with the car and hope for rescue? Or should they attempt to walk out? This decision has killed more lost travelers than any other factor. The car provided minimal shade and protection from the sun, but it was also their only landmark that rescuers might spot from the air. Leaving the car meant certain death for anyone not prepared for desert hiking, but staying meant relying on someone finding them in one of the most remote areas in North America. Cornelius made the decision that would doom his family. They would walk out together. This choice reveals how panic and desperation can override basic survival logic. In 115-degree heat, walking during daylight hours is essentially suicide. The human body cannot cool itself effectively when ambient temperature exceeds 95 degrees, and physical exertion in extreme heat leads to rapid organ failure. The family had perhaps 2 liters of water between them, enough for maybe 6 hours of survival in this environment. Desert survival experts know that the only time to travel in extreme heat is at night, moving slowly and conservatively to preserve body water. But the Rimkus family began walking during the hottest part of the day, carrying their young children and whatever supplies they could manage. The psychological pressure of watching their children suffer drove the parents to make increasingly desperate decisions. They gave most of their remaining water to George and Anja, accelerating their own dehydration. As they walked through the scorching landscape, their bodies began the irreversible process of heat exhaustion leading to heat stroke, confusion, nausea, and eventually organ failure. Cornelius and Elke Rimkus, both in their 30s, wanted to show their children, 11-year-old Anja and 5-year-old George, the wonders of the American West. They had meticulously planned their route through California and Nevada, armed with rental car maps and guidebooks, eager to experience the raw beauty of the desert landscape. On July 22, 1996, the family was driving from Las Vegas to the scenic Mammoth Lakes area when they made a decision that would seal their fate. Seeking a shortcut that would save them time and give them a more adventurous route, Cornelius turned off the main highway onto what appeared to be a desert road marked on their map. The road seemed legitimate. It was even marked with occasional signs. But what the family didn't realize was that they were entering one of the most dangerous and remote areas in North America. Death Valley isn't called Death Valley as a marketing gimmick. This 3.4 million acre wasteland holds the record for the highest air temperature ever recorded on Earth, 134 degrees Fahrenheit. During summer months, ground temperatures can exceed 200 degrees, hot enough to cause third-degree burns. The valley sits 282 feet below sea level, creating a natural oven where heat becomes trapped and amplified. There are no gas stations, no water sources, and no cell phone coverage across vast stretches of this lunar-like landscape. The Rimkus family had entered a place where even experienced desert rats think twice before venturing during summer months. They had water for maybe a day, snacks for the children, and absolutely no understanding of what they had gotten themselves into. As their small rental car bounced along increasingly rough dirt roads, the temperature outside climbed past 110 degrees, and their adventure began its transformation into a fight for survival. The most heartbreaking aspect of the Rimkus family tragedy was watching parents face every mother and father's worst nightmare, being unable to protect their children. As the family struggled through the desert heat, 5-year-old George began showing severe signs of dehydration. Children's smaller body mass means they lose water faster and succumb to heat exhaustion more quickly than adults. George became listless, then delirious, then unconscious. Cornelius and Elke made the devastating decision to carry their unconscious son while 11-year-old Anja walked beside them. This choice, born from parental love, accelerated everyone's dehydration and exhaustion. Carrying extra weight in extreme heat dramatically increases water loss through increased exertion and body temperature. But what parent could leave their dying child behind? The psychological torture of desert survival isn't just physical. It's the constant awareness that every decision might save one family member while dooming another. Elke began showing signs of severe heat exhaustion, confusion, slurred speech, and inability to walk straight. The family's water was gone, and they were now relying on their own saliva and small amounts of urine to stay alive. In extreme dehydration, the body begins shutting down non-essential functions to preserve vital organs. Kidney function decreases, concentrating urine and making it harder to produce. The little urine the body does produce becomes precious. It contains water and electrolytes that can buy crucial hours of survival time. This is when 11-year-old Anja demonstrated the survival instinct that would keep her alive while her family died around her. Without being told, she began drinking her own urine, understanding instinctively that any liquid was better than no liquid. Children often make better survival decisions than adults because they haven't yet learned that certain actions are disgusting or unthinkable. They simply do whatever keeps them alive. As George slipped into a coma from dehydration, Cornelius faced an impossible choice. Should he continue carrying his dying son, exhausting himself, and endangering Anja? Or should he leave George behind to focus on saving his daughter? The psychological weight of such decisions destroys parents even when they survive. Cornelius continued carrying George until he himself collapsed from heat exhaustion, dying within sight of his unconscious son. When 11-year-old Anja Rimkus found herself alone in Death Valley, with 3 dead family members, she faced a choice that would define her survival: give up and die with her family, or fight to live. What Anja did next demonstrates the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit and the survival advantages of childhood innocence. While adults often become paralyzed by the horror of their situation, children adapt with startling speed to new realities. Anja's survival strategy was born from necessity and instinct rather than training. She found minimal shade during the day, often crawling under rock overhangs or creating small shelters from debris. She moved only at night, when temperatures dropped below 100 degrees. Most importantly, she consumed every drop of liquid her body produced: urine, sweat, even tears, understanding that water was life in its most basic form. The psychology of a child's survival instinct differs dramatically from adult responses. Children haven't yet developed the complex fears and social inhibitions that can paralyze adults in extreme situations. Anja didn't think about the impossibility of her situation or become overwhelmed by grief for her family. She focused entirely on the immediate requirements of staying alive moment by moment. Drinking urine, while desperate, was actually sound survival strategy. Urine is sterile when it leaves the body and contains water and electrolytes that can extend survival time. In extreme dehydration scenarios, consuming urine can provide crucial hours or even days of additional survival time. Anja's small body actually worked in her favor. Children need less water than adults and can survive longer on minimal resources. Her survival routine became ritualistic: find shade before the sun became lethal, ration any moisture she could find, move slowly at night to search for help, and never stop believing that rescue would come. She found occasional moisture from dew on rocks in the early morning hours, licking every drop she could locate. She ate nothing for 13 days, surviving entirely on her body's fat and muscle reserves, while maintaining hope through what can only be described as superhuman mental strength. When the Rimkus family failed to arrive at their planned destination, a massive search and rescue operation began across multiple states. But finding 4 people in Death Valley's 3.4 million acres is like finding needles in a haystack the size of Connecticut. The search effort involved helicopters, fixed-wing aircraft, ground teams, and satellite imagery. But Death Valley's vast size and extreme terrain made the operation extraordinarily difficult. Search and rescue teams knew they were racing against time. In summer temperatures, survival time for unprepared individuals is measured in hours, not days. The psychological pressure on rescue teams is enormous. They know that every hour of delay likely means another death. Aircraft flew grid patterns across the desert, searching for any sign of the family's rental car or tracks in the sand. Ground teams focused on known water sources and roads, hoping the family had made logical survival decisions. But the Rimkus family had made the classic mistake of leaving their vehicle, making them nearly impossible to spot from the air. Heat makes aerial searches even more difficult. Thermal columns and mirages distort vision, and the extreme temperatures limit how long aircraft can safely operate. Helicopter engines struggle in the thin, superheated air, and pilots must constantly monitor engine temperatures to avoid mechanical failure. The search area expanded daily as teams realized the family could have traveled much further than initially estimated. False alarms were heartbreaking. Every piece of debris, every reflection of sunlight, every possible sighting raised hopes that were quickly dashed. Search coordinators faced the terrible mathematics of wilderness rescue. The probability of finding survivors decreases exponentially with each passing day, while the cost and danger of search operations increases. After a week, the official search was scaled back to occasional aerial surveys, though families and volunteers continued looking. The assumption was that no one could survive 13 days in Death Valley heat without water. That assumption was about to be proven wrong by a little girl who refused to accept that death was inevitable. On August 4th, 1996, 13 days after the Rimkus family had disappeared, a park ranger conducting a routine patrol spotted something that shouldn't exist. A small figure walking across the desert floor in temperatures exceeding 115 degrees. When Ranger Tom Kirby reached 11-year-old Anja Rimkus, he found a child who had achieved the impossible, surviving nearly 2 weeks in one of Earth's most hostile environments, with no food and virtually no water. Anja was barely conscious, severely dehydrated, and had lost nearly 20% of her body weight, but she was alive and walking. Her first words to her rescuer were asking about her family. Even in her desperate condition, her primary concern was for her parents and little brother. The medical team that treated Anja called her survival miraculous. Her body temperature was dangerously elevated, her kidneys were beginning to fail, and she was suffering from severe dehydration that should have killed her days earlier. But her vital signs were stable enough for transport, and her mental state remained remarkably clear. Doctors later determined that Anja's survival came down to several factors. Her small body size meant lower water requirements. Her child's metabolism was more efficient under stress, and her psychological resilience prevented the panic and poor decision-making that kills most desert survival victims. Most importantly, she had maintained the discipline to ration her body's fluids and move only during cooler hours. The discovery of Anja led searchers to the bodies of her family members, scattered across several miles of desert. Cornelius had died while carrying little George, who had succumbed to dehydration in his father's arms. Elke had made it furthest from the car before collapsing from heat exhaustion. Each family member had died trying to save the others, their love for each other becoming both their strength and their doom. Anja's survival story made international headlines, but for the little girl, it was just the beginning of a long journey back to normal life. She had lost her entire family and would face years of psychological treatment to process the trauma of watching her parents and brother die while she fought to stay alive. How did 11-year-old Anja Rimkus survive 13 days in Death Valley when experienced adults die within 72 hours? The science behind her survival reveals crucial lessons about human endurance and the psychology of staying alive against impossible odds. First, Anja's age worked in her favor in several ways. Children have higher surface area to volume ratios than adults, which normally makes them more vulnerable to temperature extremes. However, children also have more efficient kidneys that can concentrate urine more effectively, and their metabolisms can shift more quickly into survival mode. Anja's body began breaking down muscle and fat for energy while preserving vital organ function, a process that children handle better than adults. Second, her survival strategy was textbook perfect, even though she had no training. By consuming her own urine, she extended her survival time significantly. Urine recycling can provide an additional 1 to 3 days of survival time in extreme dehydration scenarios. She instinctively understood that any liquid was better than no liquid, overcoming the psychological barriers that stop many adults from taking this crucial step. Third, Anja's movement pattern showed remarkable survival intelligence. She traveled only at night, when temperatures dropped below 100 degrees, finding shade during peak heat hours. This prevented additional water loss through excessive sweating and kept her core body temperature from reaching lethal levels. She also conserved energy by moving slowly and purposefully, rather than panic walking like her parents had done. Perhaps most importantly, Anja maintained psychological hope throughout her ordeal. Children's brains are more plastic and adaptable than adult brains, allowing them to accept extreme situations without the mental paralysis that often kills adult survival victims. She didn't waste mental energy on regret, complex fears, or despair. She focused entirely on immediate survival needs. The medical team treating Anja noted that she showed fewer signs of post-traumatic stress than expected. Child psychologists theorized that her survival focus actually protected her mentally, giving her a sense of agency and control during an otherwise helpless situation. Her survival became proof that sometimes the most innocent among us can be the strongest, that training and equipment matter less than mental resilience and the refusal to give up hope. Anja Rimkus spent 3 weeks in intensive care at Desert Regional Medical Center, where doctors worked around the clock to repair the damage that 13 days in Death Valley had inflicted on her small body. The medical challenges were unlike anything the treating physicians had encountered. Severe dehydration had damaged her kidneys, which needed weeks of careful monitoring to ensure full recovery. Her electrolyte levels required precise rebalancing to prevent cardiac complications. The psychological trauma was equally severe. Anja had watched her entire family die while she fought to survive, creating layers of survivor guilt, grief, and post-traumatic stress that would require years of treatment. Child psychologists noted that Anja's remarkable mental strength during her survival ordeal did not protect her from the delayed psychological impact of her trauma. Once she was safe, her mind finally allowed her to process the full horror of what she had experienced. She experienced nightmares about the desert heat, panic attacks when left alone, and profound grief for her lost family. The survival skills that had kept her alive, drinking urine, moving at night, rationing moisture, now became sources of shame and confusion. Yet even in her darkest moments, Anja displayed the same resilience that had saved her life in Death Valley. She worked with therapists to process her trauma, slowly rebuilding her sense of safety and hope for the future. The legal and practical challenges were equally complex. Anja was now an orphan in a foreign country, with no immediate family to care for her. German consular officials worked with American authorities to arrange her repatriation while ensuring she received the medical and psychological care she needed. Her story had made international headlines, bringing both support and unwanted attention. Media outlets around the world wanted to interview the miracle girl, while child protection advocates fought to preserve her privacy during her recovery. Distant relatives in Germany eventually gained custody, but Anja's transition back to normal life was anything but smooth. She struggled with survivor guilt. Why had she lived when her family died? She experienced social isolation as peers couldn't relate to her extraordinary trauma. School became a challenge as concentration problems and anxiety interfered with her education. Simple activities like family gatherings or summer heat became triggers for panic attacks and flashbacks to her time in the desert. But gradually, with patience and professional support, Anja began to heal. She learned to see her survival not as a source of guilt, but as a testament to her family's love. They had given their lives trying to save her, and her survival honored their sacrifice. She became an advocate for wilderness safety education, working with organizations to teach proper desert survival techniques and the importance of emergency preparedness for travelers. Her survival techniques are now taught in military survival schools and emergency response training programs worldwide. The Anja method, her instinctive approach to desert survival, has been credited with saving other lives in extreme situations. Years later, Anja returned to Death Valley as an adult, not as a victim, but as a survivor, sharing her story to help others avoid her family's tragic mistakes. She established a memorial fund in her family's memory, dedicated to improving wilderness safety education and supporting search and rescue operations in remote areas. Today, Anja Rimkus is a mother herself, living quietly in Germany with her own family. She rarely gives interviews about her survival, preferring to let her story speak for itself, as a testament to human resilience and the power of refusing to give up. But when she does speak publicly, her message is always the same. Survival isn't about being the strongest or the smartest. It's about making good decisions under pressure, never giving up hope, and doing whatever it takes to stay alive until help arrives. Her family's tragedy serves as a powerful reminder that adventure and exploration must be balanced with proper preparation, respect for natural forces, and understanding of our own limitations. But her survival proves that human endurance, when combined with good decision-making and unshakable hope, can overcome odds that seem impossible.